Well, welcome. It's July 5th, 2026, the day after July 4th, 250th anniversary. Had a lot of storms yesterday, and the weather is cooling off. Today we're going to look at July 4th as a special topic. The month of July is named for Julius Caesar. It used to be Quintilius, as Quintus being the fifth number, so March was number one. March, April, May, June, July. And then we get the fifth month being renamed to Julius for Julius Caesar. Dog days begin in early July. And there was a legend in the 13th century that they took a day from February or whatever to add to July for Julius Caesar, but apparently that was made up. And Jesus mentions Caesar twice, or once mainly in Matthew 22. Remember, do we pay tribute to Caesar or not? He says, whose is this inscription and superscription? The superscription comes from Latin, it means inscription. And a little play on words is there is icon is the same word as house, and epigraphy is like epitaphy, which is your epitaph. And then K is like you burn. And so there's a play on words. Whose image and the inscription? Whose house you burn, epitaph. In other words, he didn't think too highly of the Romans and so forth. And then the Caesar. Give the Caesars what's Caesar. In Greek, that's Caesaris Caesari. And he's making the sum of Caesaris Caesari and serpents, as if they're the serpents. And I showed a little thing there when we were in Myrtle Beach, the Toys R Us with the dinosaur. We make the same type of play on words in English that we make here. Yeah. So we have that. So we have the July 4th. You can say it different ways. Remember, in Greek, you can have a question or a statement. You can do the same thing in English. Proud to be an American. Or you could say, proud to be an American. Do you see how you get two different ideas? And so you have to be careful when you look at the Greek with just the words. Yeah. Now, 250th anniversary, you said it was June, but you lied. Right? So that little play on words. Star Wars, May the 4th be with you, July 4th. We're going to look and go back and then forward in time a little bit. Where were you 50 years ago, July 4th? I had just finished jumping out of planes at airborne school. That's the closest I got to the Air Force. Then there's me in a Leopard tank. I was in an exchange program with the West German Officers School. The sign there says, Auch drüben ist Deutschland. In other words, over there is Germany too. And in the picture, I don't know if you can see to the upper left of that where I'm there, you can see the tower where the East German Guard, they were watching us, we're watching them, and you didn't want to go out there. And I also spent a month with the mobile bridge platoon and engineers. You see those little boats? That's the closest I ever got to the Navy and being on a ship. Some people in the Navy say that doesn't count. but that's the closest, but that's where I got. So that's where I was over there while everything was happening here. Let's go back in time. Another celebration. This was for the victory of World War II, going right by the Franklin Building and the square with the Liberty Bell. Yeah. Do you know at that time one little girl actually got to march in that parade? Another parade and see the parade. They marched in this parade with the band, not with the military. Yeah. And they got to touch the Liberty Bell because the guard held her up. Try getting that to happen today. Yeah.
Now I saw a picture of a little boy touching it on TV.
You did? Okay, she saw that. So I guess you can still do that. Let's go back. June 4th, 1944. Yogi Bear was on a naval support ship for D-Day, but they fired 1,100 U.S. guns fire on the 4th of July as a salute. Yeah, so we have all those things from World War II. Of course, a year earlier, we talk about the greatest generation in all the wars we've had. We've lost 600,000 men, died, which is, we need to honor them. They did a lot. At Stalingrad in 4 months, they had more die on each side than we had in all our wars put together. And there were about like 7 or 8 million German deaths on the Eastern Front, like 10 million Russian deaths or so. It was unbelievable. And they were the bad guys fighting the bad guys. We'll come back to that. The USSR was a union of Soviet Socialist Republic. Socialism meaning a humanist idea instead of a Bible God idea. Of course, Nazi is short for National Socialist. So both of those you don't hear too much today, but it was both sides, bad guy fighting bad guy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Almost like Ukraine and Russia today. It's not a good guy. It's like a bad guy. What do you do with this? Anyway, let's go back to 1915. School children petitioned for the Liberty Bell to come out west. This was during World War I. We weren't in there. So they took the Liberty Bell out. It came right through Elizabethtown and then came back. Phil Clark, the mayor of Elizabethtown, he's done research on Elizabethtown history, and apparently it only went through Elizabethtown, I think on the way back, but one of the ways, not both ways. Doesn't matter, but we did get a picture of that. That was in 1915, photographed by G. Bishop. He died in 1930. His son ran the studio in town. And that's since our church had the photographer from town attending the church, we have like a few dozen pictures going back to 1905, whereas a lot of churches don't have any. And the only reason we have them is that the photographer was in our church. He took pictures of his classes and other related things. They said there was a big crowd there, but yeah, Liberty Bell came through about July 4th. Go back to 1876. We were ready to celebrate the 100 years, and news was just trickling in that Custer had just been wiped out at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. And so that was reaching the nation's capital because news traveled slower in those days. 1863, we have Gettysburg. And this was the day after the battle. It was extremely hot for those 3 days, almost like it was the last few days. There's a picture of Longstreet telling Pickett, yeah, go charge. You know it's not going to work. And when I was young, all the kids liked going to visit these battlefields. You can see how happy they are. Yeah, so we have the Civil War with Lee retreating. And that was the July 4th end. Local history, there's a map of before the battle, before they converged on Gettysburg. You see on the right we have Wrightsville, and that's only less than about 10 miles from here. That's the closest they got to where we're at. And Columbia, they had invested a lot in their local bank for their economy in the bridge to help the economy. And when they burned the bridge, there was no insurance, of course, in those days, and it really hurt the economy. But that was July then. I'll just read the first part. There's my great uncle, grandfather's brother, Uncle Blaine. There's Aunt Kitty. She attended here for years. We have pictures of her. And in his little history, he wrote, my mother told us that during the Civil War, her parents could hear the cannon at Gettysburg. That would have been about 40 miles away. So I won't read the rest of it, but yeah, we have little local history there. We have some quotes. Abraham Lincoln talked a lot. Think of a president saying this today. Would they get into trouble? A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. Do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Of course, that's from Mark 3:25 or Matthew 12:25 about a house divided cannot stand. Another quote, both North and South read from the same Bible and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. The prayers of both could not be answered. That of neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has his own purposes. And that's always a problem when people take the Bible and say, oh, this is a battle cry. God is for us and not for the other side. You usually don't want to make that assumption. And that's that verse in Romans. I think I have a slide later on. What shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? And armies have gone to battle, killing other Christians and other people, using this as a battle cry. Abraham Lincoln said, "Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right." You know. And you hear some you'll hear in sermons, the most important thing is not to be right. Well, are you saying the most important thing is to be wrong? We want to be as right as we can. It's just that sometimes we think we're right and we're not. Man's righteousness is what is right as an opinion or glory of man. That's humanism, socialism. God's righteousness is what is right as in an opinion that is the glory of God. So if you ever hear that God will not share His glory with anyone, the Greek word is opinion. God has His opinion. He doesn't want someone else giving their opinion in place of God's opinion. But there we have Abraham Lincoln. Let's go back a few years. James Monroe. We had 3 presidents die on July 4th, 1831. You know how old people sometimes, they have this goal, they're going to make it to a certain birthday or a certain thing, and then they kind of give up. And that's what happened. 3 of them wanted to make it to that July 4th anniversary, and then that was all they could do. You know. The hymn, America, My Country, 'Tis of Thee, was written at age 24 by Samuel Francis Smith, a Baptist minister, performed in 1831. This was the 55th anniversary, and this was the same day James Monroe passed away. Yeah. And part of his motivation was Psalms 33:12. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom He hath chosen for His own inheritance. So, and My Country, 'Tis of Thee, we've all sang that. Yeah, My country, 'tis of Thee, sweet land of liberty, of Thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. You don't hear that too much anymore, yeah. Now, if we go back to 1826, that was the 50-year anniversary. Jefferson, number 3, and Adams, number 2, passed away within hours of each other. And one of them said, well, at least the other guy's here, but he didn't realize because news didn't travel. We didn't have cell phones. Jefferson, one quote, "I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that His justice cannot sleep forever." So, 50th anniversary. If we go back to July 4th, 1802, West Point Military Academy was founded. And for, till 1974, as an engineering school, they were classical engineers using the slide rule, which you can see there. And then in the spring, they were allowed to use the TI-SR 50 calculator. So I learned how to use the slide rule, expecting to use it, but never did use it. I still have it. Yeah. So, July 4th. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Created, they may not stay equal, and they are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Created equal comes from the Bible, a number of verses. A lot of people do not like the Declaration. They want to replace the Declaration in the Constitution because of the references to God and the Bible, and this is one of them. I'll come back to that with the Revolution later. Now, 1 Peter has some interesting verses. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be the king or supreme. That's not what humanism says. We need to take over and run it ourselves. Or unto governors, unto them that are sent by them for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free, and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. We had heard a version this morning in the sermon, a version of that, right? You have to be careful how you use your freedom. Just because you have that freedom in Christ, you have to be careful how you use it. This is a verse that does support that viewpoint. Because you'll get a lot of social and political change. Here's Mahatma Gandhi, and there's the victory parade, that same parade through the square. There's a band there. Someone from Elizabethtown took color film of the first 10 seconds of every float. We can't see who's playing flute in the back. we can see the front. And someone in here was actually in that parade. A few years ago, we saw this little sign that was when you come in, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." That's a Gandhi quote, and that kind of disappeared, which I was glad it disappeared. So the day before that parade, there was, Gandhi's supposed to be peaceful and peaceful revolution. Well, 10,000 people were killed in Calcutta in Direct Action Day, where Gandhi represents the Hindu side. So this humanist viewpoint can result in a lot of deaths and so forth. Now, here's one of the verses that caused some issues. "Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king." You are supposed to honor the person in charge regardless, and you're supposed to just do what Jesus wants. Paul says the same thing, but he says it in a little more careful worded manner. This became a problem when the founding fathers decided we needed to break away from the king. People will say, "Oh, we weren't a Christian nation." Well, not everyone was. Some were. But it was important enough that they had to sit down and write a Declaration of Independence to convince all these Bible-believing people that they should, in this case, we don't honor the king, even though that's what Paul says and what Peter says. And so when someone says we weren't a Bible-believing nation, well, why do we write the Declaration? No other revolution has written a declaration. They didn't need to bring people on board. They just did it other ways. And so that's one piece of evidence that, we needed to get them on board. 90 years later, that was a problem in the Civil War because the South wanted to break away. And a lot of people said, no, we should honor the king. We should not break away. So they had the same problem. Now, let's go back. Let's come up to July 4th, Independence Day. We went back in time a little bit forward. Luke 3:1, "Now in the 50th year in the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea." Remember Caesar with the serpents and all those playing words? Well, here it's just all the emperors started calling themselves Caesar. Just like Rome said they would never have a king. They never did. They called him Caesar or First Consul, but they were dictators nonetheless. Just like the United States will never have a dictator, right? Or a king. If we do, it'll be called president. It's playing with names. But Tiberius Caesar, he had a saying about taxes, and this is just one of them because he said it many, many times. "It is the duty of a good shepherd to shear his sheep and not to skin them." Because in other words, you get all the taxes you can, but if you take too many taxes out, it's going to go down. You see that in some places where they try to tax too much and people just leave the state. Now, when Jesus was walking in Galilee and Judea, at the exact same time Tiberius was saying that, Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for his sheep." Do you see the two different views there? One, you want to tax everyone, get everything you can out of the sheep. But don't kill them, just enslave them, get the money out. And the other says, "I am the good shepherd, and I'm going to give my life for the sheep." Two different views. Now, let's follow this together. In 9 AD, Arminius, a German who had been educated in Rome and things like that, he organizes the Germans and slaughters, I think, 3 Roman legions under Varus at Teutoburg Forest. It's only in the past 50 years they actually found the remains because no one knew where it was in this deeply dense forest. So Rome and Tiberius, till his dying days, said, "Give me back my legions, Varus," because they were expensive to equip, and he had lost all these soldiers, very expensive. He was worried about money. Jesus is, of course, the Good Shepherd. So Rome never again tried to move into what is today Germany. They kept out of there. Those German tribes are very independent. They said, no one's going to tell us what to do, which is why it's so hard for Arminius to get them organized, but he did for once. Now, Rome continued to be a big influence in France, in Gaul. So France got what we would call their big and powerful government ideas. Whereas those self-independence ideas went into Britain earlier, became England. the Vikings come in. All of that's, I'm independent. I don't need to listen to what you're telling me. And then the Norman conquest came in, and there you have the big government thing. We're going to control everything. The big state is everything. And then we had the Reformation with the Anglican Church and the Puritans, and all these religious groups moved over here to get religious freedom. Do you see how all these three ideas came together, and you don't get them in every country? We have the religious freedom. We have the groups that say we don't need to be told what to do by the big government and everything. We're independent. And we have the parts that have the French influence. Well, we need this big government in Rome and Caesar and all of that. And can you see how they conflict? And they're all merged together in our country. Now, actually, if we go back and look at the Ostrogoths and Visigoths, I'm just going to mention it, they had a word called Almerek, which means rich ruler. We see it today in Emery, Emmerich, and in Italian, Amerigo, Amelia, Americae, all meant like a rich ruler. And when some Amerigo Vespucci comes in and we get named for it, the actual word America goes back to the Gothic, meaning a rich, powerful ruler. And so it's just somewhat ironic that that ends up being the name of the country America. Now I mentioned about those battle cries. Here's my Uncle Donnie. There's a banner of him downtown. Married Elsie, who did Good News Club. Part of what he did is guard corpses at a concentration camp, which he never talked about except to Dad. But he gave me his belt buckle, and on that it said Gott mit uns, which I was studying German. Oh, God with us. And that's part of that Matthew 1:23. Emmanuel means God with us. In German, it's Gott mit uns. In Russian, it's Si nama Bog, and Nobiscum Deus in Latin. That verse that just means God is with us was used by battle cries for a whole host of nations, Russian and German, going way back before World War II, and of course the Latin Crusades and others. Now I'm not sure why you're supposed to use a Bible verse to go kill other people and go to war. And I bring that up so when we put something like "In God We Trust" on our currency, do we really trust in God, or is that just something there? It's like putting Gott mit uns on your belt buckle with the swastika just to get people to come. It doesn't mean anything. And there we have this, what shall we say then? If God be for us, who can be against us? And Paul's just saying, he's making a play on words. If God is above us in the text, and all those verses he talks about God being with us, who can be down on us? And down in the text, and he has verses about being down, including the elect, which aren't good, and separating yourself from the love of Christ, and all of these. So it's just, but it's a battle cry. They'll use this as a battle cry. So we have that Constitution again. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. They are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So where do we go from there? Well, we let the cat out of the bag because the French supported us because they wanted the king to support us. Say, oh, they're fighting England, we got to support them, because they really wanted a revolution in France. And that word for democracy actually means power, demos. We have that there in the common prison, demosia, of kratos. So demokratos means power of the people. Jesus makes a play on words of the klatos, kratos being the branch of the tree, being the power. Yeah, so democracy. So we're a democratic republic. We're supposed to have rules. The founding fathers looked for all these ways that the Greek democracy and the Roman democracy disintegrated, and they put in all these rules to keep it from happening. A lot of those rules involved making sure change doesn't happen fast. And one of those is like the Electoral College is designed to keep change from happening fast. And there are a number of others, and as we undo them, we get to where we can make change fast, which can be a problem. Franklin is attributed to saying democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. And you take it away, you eat that lamb, which is what happened in Greece and it happened in Rome, things like that. So the American Revolution started that. We needed a Declaration of Independence to get those Bible-believing people on board. They haven't done that since. French Revolution, 10,000 people losing their heads over the matter, guillotine. And they even started guillotining the people who started the revolution. And then it fell apart, so Napoleon took over as dictator because there was nothing left. He actually wasn't French. He was born in Corsica, which wasn't French. We get to the Russian Revolution in 1917, where Lenin took over the democracy in Russia. He got rid of it. Then we got Stalin came in, the Socialist Republic. It said Hitler killed 10 million civilians, including 6 million Jews. Stalin took care of 20 million of his own people. And the method that Lenin used is the same one that's used today. It's the same one that Hitler used. And what you do is you create division in a country. You then promise splinter groups whatever they want. And they support you, like the Leningrad sailors with Lenin. Now, once you get control, you take the guns away from everyone, and he ended up shooting anyone who disagreed with him, including all those groups he had promised to. And whenever there was violence or something and the democracy tried to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, they would accuse the democracy of doing what they were doing. So you may see this again someday, but that's how Lenin got power. He had those Leningrad sailors tracked down and shot, and some of them got across Lake Ladoga at Leningrad to Finland. But yeah, you get rid of all your competition. Hitler did the same thing, Night of the Long Knives. Yeah, so Hitler came in. He accused the Weimar democracy of doing all these things that he was doing. He promised all these groups things, and once he got in, they were gone. And it happened so fast, neither the Russians nor the Germans realized what had happened. Then we have like socialist, communist China. When we were in school in the 60s, we go, oh, they have a cultural revolution. They didn't tell us, oh, they got rid of 60 million people. They just disappeared. And they didn't say anything about it because I found out later our history teachers were leaning towards that way. They liked the socialism, communist idea. But I wrote these long essays about the dangers of socialism and Hitler and Stalin, and so all they did is give me a A+, because I had so much data there, but I think they never mentioned too much of that in class because they knew that I already knew all this and might ask questions. So that's where we're at today. I'll finish with the verse, Matthew 24, Olivet Discourse. Ye shall hear of wars and reports of wars. See that you be not troubled. This must all come to pass, but the end is not yet. So when you hear all these things, it's like Chicken Little saying, the sky is falling. And Jesus talks about that, but not here. But this is a little bit on July 4th, where it came from. July 4th, some of the things that came from the Bible, how it actually impacted us from the revolution and other countries, and it points at some of the issues we can face today, and I'll let you look at the news and what's happening and the rumors and everything that goes on and figure out what's happening. So then, July 4th in the Bible. Thank you.